John Paul Jones was the father of our Navy and went against one of the biggest British ships. John Paul was a famous captain for a commander named George Washington, and he was also a sea merchant. John Paul Jones' name was John Paul in his early life until he did something horrible. A young man named John Paul grew up by a bay and watched ships sail in. At 13, he got a job as an apprentice for a sea merchant. By the time he was 21, he was already a captain of his own boat. He did become a sea merchant. In his early life of being a captain, he sailed across the 7 seas to sell items. He did need money and had to trade slaves so he wouldn't go broke. He wanted to get enough money to move to America so he could be with some of his relatives. After years of successful trading in the West Indies, John Paul had to move to Virginia and change his name. John Paul went to an island called Tobago. John Paul did something that would change his life. In 1773, a gang of sailors attacked John Paul looking for advance pay. John Paul defended himself, but he killed one of the men. John Paul then fled to America. He fled to Virginia and changed his name to John Paul Jones. He told the people at the island that he wouldn't get a fair trial there, and he fled. And he lived in Virginia in the time the American Revolution started. He then sided with the Patriots, which would make him famous. John Paul Jones quickly sided with the Patriots and eventually helped make the Navy. John Paul's famous battle took place off the coast of England. He won against one of the biggest British ships. Even with ships in tatters, John Paul proclaimed, "I have not yet begun to fight." The British captain decided to surrender. This may have been the biggest Navy win in American history. Jones' ship then sunk a day later, and he had to switch over to the British ship he just took over. Jones' ship was called the Baron Richard, and the British ship was called the Serapis. The American Revolution ships were tiny compared to the British ships, so it was very difficult to sink them. After the famous battle, the American independence, Jones requested to have a navy for the new country called United States of America. The new country could not afford a navy. The war ran us out of money, and not a single state had any money. They could not tax, so they did not have a navy. Jones went to Russia to fight in the navy. After a few years, Jones decided to move to Paris with some of his friends. Their goal was to make enough money to move to a state in America. Jones died at the age of 45. His remains were a mystery for about 100 years. After a 6-year search in the early 1900s, John Paul Jones' remains were found and removed to Annapolis, Maryland. They made a shrine over his grave in honor for his great battles in the Navy. He is now known as the father of our Navy. John Paul Jones' life ended well, but he did have to suffer slightly. Jones' actions have been honored every day by our Navy. We should never forget the man who made our Navy.